So it was Saturday night, and I was getting ready to go to bed. I was going to read my tarot cards when a friend invited me out to a party at this coffee shop in East Austin, and I decided it'd be really fun to go. I got on my bike, I headed down, and what immediately caught my attention when I got there was the tree. It's this massive tree towering over the whole venue. Very, very, very powerful aura on this tree. And it's like flickering with light. Every single curve in it is able to be accented. The lighting designer can switch between which branches he highlights and really bring it to life. But the tree's definitely a living thing, and it's much older than any of us. The tree is a photosynthetic organism. This light that we're shining up at it, we were shining on the trees, maybe the tree thought was interesting or useful, or exhaling carbon dioxide up to it. To a certain extent, I think it might have been a nice experience for the tree. I can imagine that if the tree maybe responded positively to the music, if the tree maybe responded positively to the energy of the people. And I felt like the lighting had a very powerful effect in kind of highlighting this tree's agency in this environment. The way the tree was like the dominant feature of the room and needed to be brought out, that it was a natural asset for the lighting designer to work with. And really, they used that tree in order to accomplish what I felt like was the larger psycho-political agenda of the joint performance of the venue, the lighting designer, and the DJ, which was to create a sort of transpersonal aesthetic, although it's one that is mediated by access to money, to be able to pay the $30 fee to get in, and also mediated by what kind of substances people are able to consume while in the environment, because there's a whole economy of labor that goes into producing this larger cultural production. And this tree is embedded in that this tree is sort of claimed as a piece of property, although it's really its own organism, a free organism that probably predates like the firm solidification of the notion of property. For some people, it's just sort of an ambient background. I think on the more totally inhibitory substances like alcohol, it's very ambient. But for the people who are there on substances that might increase their sensitivity to external stimuli, including stimulants, including cannabis for some people, and including psychedelics, I think that the potential of the lighting designer in this instance is very instrumental in terms of what it chooses to highlight, what colors it chooses to paint the environment. It's able to cast this ominous red over the tree, and it starts to look like a lung or like a brain, and it has like this purple in its fringes. And I wonder to what extent the tree finds this to be some kind of worshipping activity. I wonder to what extent the tree can kind of detect the affects, detect this sort of bizarrely convoluted burnt offering that is like mediated through all these steps, but it's a burnt offering somewhere taking place in a power plant. This conversion of like petrochemicals into energy and then into electricity and into light that then bombards this photosynthetic creature with it in the middle of the night and projects this really deep humming vibration into the ground, this chatter. To what extent is this a pleasurable experience for the tree? Is it a surreal experience for the tree? How would I interpret that if I were a tree? I would think,
these people are worshiping me. I am the tree. I'm better than all of you people. I look at you and I see you enjoying yourselves, and I think, yes, this is because of me. I am the tree. That is what I did.
I spoke with the lighting designer after I had spent some time filming the different lamps and lights that were around the area, and I was really curious, to what extent does the DJ control them? To what extent are they synchronized with his music? The area, and I was really curious, to what extent does the DJ control them? To what extent are they synchronized with his music by like a beats per minute type thing? What is the what is the level of programming and integration between the electronic music and the electronic light show? And one useful kind of idea of how to think about the economy of this is perhaps with a burnt offering, which is used in a lot of cultures as a way of giving something to the divine or the spiritual or the transhuman or more than human. They're channeling these petrochemical, carbon-based fuels that we burn, that we accumulate money so that we can afford to burn, that we try to manipulate the price of through all these different financial schemes. We're channeling that burnt offering, the energy from that burnt offering, into these machines. And it's providing like this sort of magical substance that can animate things in our environment and bring them to life and like program them into extensions of our bodies, program them into tools for our creative expression, and allow us to paint entire environments, to shift the colors of light, and in shifting the colors of light, start to provide this integrative, immersive experience that enables people to feel like they are able, like it drowns out their ability to feel self-conscious or to feel like they are, like to overanalyze what they're doing, and enables them to just kind of let go. Like it drowns out their ability to feel self-conscious or to feel like they are, like to overanalyze what they're doing, and enables them to just kind of let go by putting them in this immersive environment that's just rich with all of this alterity and overstimulation, flashing lights, this backwash on the stage that provides this super deep contrast with the largely cool color palette that he uses outside. It really puts this focus on the DJ. And then you have the geometry laid over that canvas. And the lasers are really one of the big elements, as I talked to the lighting designer that he specializes in. He meant to actually use that projector to the left, but it got broken, and so he was unable to use it, and it was going to be projecting stuff onto the wall. But he still was using the par lamps to illuminate the tree, and depending on where you put the lamps, you actually end up with a control of like gradient. So you can see that there's like a blending up towards the top of that tree. And then also these hex lights were able to either shine against the disco ball or look out into the audience. And that can be contrasted with these other lamps, which have oil filters on them, which are rotating according to preset patterns, all controlled from the lighting designer's computer. What this represents as an extension of the lighting designer's agency is it's an element that is integrated into the macro human body that has been black boxed into to the point where it can be used and learned as a creative and expressive tool by someone who might not necessarily know all of the like machine code level programming, all of the like even like hardware level ionic pathways and stuff that are involved in automating a system like this. So there's a lot of intelligence in it, but so much of it is like deeply embedded. And I think that's also the way that a lot of organisms are, is like the intelligence that you see outwardly with them is really kind of like the superficial levels of what is going on in them. And who knows what the tree's really thinking about all this. The tree is being adorned with light in the middle of the night, which is a food source for it, in addition to these carbon dioxide exhalations. And this fog, which sort of drifts over everything like a solvent, in which, like the lighting designer mentioned, is something he needed to keep a particular eye on, because you don't want to have too much fog or it blocks people's view, but you want to have enough fog to draw out the beams and to draw out the lights in the environment, to really accentuate the lasers and make sure that people kind of can have a clear view of the DJ at the same time, who a lot of people had come out to see, especially people from Eastern Europe. I heard from one person who was from Ukraine and from one person who was from Russia, but I heard that there had been like another DJ playing earlier that day, and I don't want to mix it up. But the way that this tree is integrated, though, into this larger production is, I think, done in a way that draws out its agency, that turns it into a key player in the cultural production, and that I think is probably accentuated under some of the psychoactive substances that are being consumed at this event. And that is an aspect of this that I felt like it was interesting to consider, how the lighting designer has to take that into account, because the affects in the environment that they choose to draw out with their ability to manipulate light and fog and atmosphere can have a very profound effect on people, especially when they're under the influence of substances like cannabis or psilocybin, which is found in magic mushrooms. Many people are on alcohol. There's a lot of alcohol flowing through this crowd. There's people on the edges delivering alcohol to people. It's an inhibitory substance, a social lubricant. And so people are seeking it out as a way to sort of ground themselves and allow themselves to just kind of get into the flow and go along with the music and enjoy the lights and not worry about whether or not they're good at dancing or whether they're bad at dancing. Can allow them to have emotional release with other people. And that's very important in a culture where people are not used to emotional release, and people tend to be very guarded, and have difficulty loosening up and dancing. It is also mixed in there with cannabis, which is a substance that can have paradoxical effects, with magic mushrooms, which can increase the perception of meaning in the environment, increase sensations of synesthesia, which can be very profound with this mixture of light and sound. It can often induce in higher doses a sense of ego death, but really there's a partial ego loss or ego minimization that happens necessarily, that everyone is kind of seeking out here. And when the light designer is highlighting the agency of the tree and emphasizing that, what it ends up doing, in my opinion, is communicating that affect of the more than human, of the importance of the more than human, of the tree. And it centers the agency of nature in a way that I found really profound.